So validation is the last term we want to introduce you to before we dive in and start working with your own age-rated groups. And validation really has to do with making sure before we actually build the plans out that we have the correct medical and RX benefits associated for a particular set of premiums. So as part of the workflow, when we build out our conversion and import sheets, we are identifying the plans that are loaded in our library by using the coding system. So in times where we maybe made a mistake and entered the wrong code, validation lets us know that before we actually start working on the plans. It's really kind of a stopgap to make sure that we actually can identify all of the medical and RX benefits that we are loading into Dynamis. So the key is that with validation, it allows us to account for any mistakes before we actually dive in. So that if we found that there is a medical plan we don't already have entered in, instead of having to leave the whole system and go create that plan, we can do that right from the validation screen. And you'll actually see that when we have a correctly associated medical and RX plan with a set of premiums, you'll actually get a green, meaning that it can recognize everything. For things that there are an error, the system can't recognize a particular thing, you'll clearly see that identified in red and be able to make any of those corrections right there. So validation is a step to just make sure that everything can be correctly associated before we actually start working with those plan designs. So census, starting with a common census with our information that we'll use across all of our quotes, paired with conversion of rate tables, gets us premiums that we import in. Validation makes sure that it can associate all the medical and RX benefits we're trying to work with before we actually dive in and start working with those plan designs. So now that you're introduced to the terminology, we're going to actually dive in and get a look at what this workflow process looks and feels like as we actually start with the census, convert, import, and validate plans in the dashboard.